In this video, I'll show you how I made my first story game in Roblox in 7 days. Before making this game, I had already learned the basics of Roblox Studio, and had made a few small projects before, but this was my first proper game. I figured that 7 days would be a good length of time to develop a short story game. My current goal is to expand my knowledge of Roblox Studio by creating small and manageable games in a variety of different genres. Hopefully they might inspire you too to start making your own cool projects. I decided to make a story game, as story games can combine different types of Roblox games. I decided that the game would have an obby section, a fighting section, some basic puzzles, and basic GUI in the form of dialogue boxes and other messages for the user. Since this was my first game, I thought it would be cool to use the building style of classic Roblox games that I used to play when I was younger, like Natural Disaster Survival and Flood Escape. These games used classic textures and more simple models, and they also tend to show exposed studs. The initial idea that I came up with was a game where the player plays as the original default Roblox avatar and has to save a classic Roblox town made up of noobs by doing different things like solving puzzles and navigating obstacle courses. Once I had this idea in mind, I started working on the game. On day 1, I got quite a lot done. I started off by creating a small area of the map using some existing models, and I then started working on the game's main story script, which is what will handle all of the events and dialogue for the game. This script works by keeping track of the story state using a number variable. The number increases when the player interacts with certain objects or does certain things, and this causes different things to happen in the game world as a result, like writing dialogue to the screen. After this, I created a simple spawn location with the main noob. I also added invisible walls to the starter house, which disappear once the player triggers the noob's proximity prompt to start the game. I couldn't find models for the old default Roblox avatars, so I recreated them using Roblox Studio's rig builder, based on images from the Roblox wiki. I then created a simple GUI that appears when the player loads into the game, which allows them to pick between the two default avatars. When the player selects one of them, the local script sets the model as the player's starter character. In Roblox, replacing the player's starter character means that this is the character that the player spawns in as whenever they respawn. On day 2, I started by making the map larger. Creating maps usually takes a while, but for this game I was able to use many existing models for the town, like the classic house. Originally, I'd been thinking about creating multiple locations, like a small city area, with the classic Roblox buildings, but I thought it would be better to have everything fit into a single area than having multiple areas with less to do in each one. On day 3, I created a basic dialogue box GUI, using a viewport frame, which is like a camera that only displays its children in the workspace. I positioned an NPC model so that its head appeared in the box as the person speaking. Then, after some trial and error, I created a typewriter effect for having dialogue appear in the text label using a function. I was able to figure out how to do this myself, but if you want to create a similar effect on your own, you can check out this video by Blocks in the description. On day 1, I had used Roblox's built-in function for making an NPC walk to a position, but this wasn't reliable, and didn't work with navigating around obstacles. As such, I found a tutorial online and learned how to implement better pathfinding. This video was by the Dev King, and you can check it out in the description. On day 4, I didn't get much coding done as I mostly focused on creating the game world by adding fences, trees, cars, and other objects. In the middle of the town, I added a small podium and a fountain, as well as lots of noobs for the player to interact with as part of the story. On day 5, I worked on creating a unique house as part of the game's story. This also involved adding a key and the code to make it open the door. I then worked on adding a classic zombie to the game, and it was at this point that I decided to switch the game from being client-side to server-side. Since the game is designed to be single-player, I had initially planned for everything to take place on the client, so that multiple players could play through the game at the same time without affecting one another. However, when it came to spawning zombies and placing tools in the workspace for only specific players, I realized that this wasn't a very good approach. As such, I decided to make everything take place on the server and to make the game's maximum player size be 1. On day 6, I finished adding all of the final objects and areas to the game. This included buttons, which the player uses to unlock the final section of the map. After this, I continued fixing bugs and making changes until the scripts were fully server-side. I also added a status bar for the player to tell them what to do next in the story. This works by sending remote events from the server to the client, with text at different points throughout the story. On day 7, I spent a while playtesting the game from start to finish and fixing all of the remaining bugs that I encountered. I then updated the game settings with all of the relevant information, and I took screenshots to show off the game. I also designed a simple icon for the game in Google Drawings. I decided to call the game Welcome to Noobtown, and with that I was finished. You can check out the game in the description. This was my first video, so I'd appreciate any feedback you might have. I plan to do more videos like this in the future. Thanks for watching.